There's not many guys that have won 3, so that would definitely mean a lot. I feel like I've been in the conversation, a number of years outside of the 2 that I've won. We're talking about in 12 when AP went nuts against us in the last game of the year. I had a pretty good year that year. Obviously in 16 we made our run and led the league in passing touchdowns. Didn't really get a sniff for some reason that year.
Rodgers looking slim. What's going on, everybody? Welcome into First Take. Lewis Riddick, Max Kellerman. I'm Molly Karen Rose. Stephen A. will be with us in just a moment. I heard he's in his backyard sledding or building a snowman or something, but he's going to come in shortly. Lewis, good to have you with us. And let's start right with Aaron Rodgers. You heard him. He was saying he'd love to have his 3rd MVP here. But with that being said, Max, there's this other guy in the AFC who has only 1 loss. You've heard of him, Patrick Mahomes. Who is the MVP right now between those 2? Is it Rodgers or is it Mahomes?
Right now, if the MVP had to be handed out right now, it would have to go to Aaron Rodgers. And I've been on this show saying, I said before, the first time I saw Patrick Mahomes throw in the preseason, I came on the show and said, I'm going to tell my grandkids about this. It looked like Brett Favre with the arm talent, and except that he doesn't make the mistakes Favre makes. And then I went on to say, okay, this is the best quarterback I've ever seen. I thought Aaron Rodgers was, Mahomes is. Every year I think Mahomes is going to win the MVP. All those things are true. But I never thought Mahomes at his best is that much better than Aaron Rodgers at Rodgers' best. I thought if I had to choose, I'd take Mahomes by a hair, and it looked as though Rodgers was no longer at his best. I know he was in a new system. I get it with LaFleur, and they won 13 games, but he didn't look the same. He looked like more of a game manager. But it turns out now in the second year of the system, Aaron Rodgers is very comfortable, and he hasn't missed a beat, and he's having one of his greatest seasons. And though he has targets and he has a running game, and his defense seems like it's good enough, and he is protected behind the line of scrimmage. All those things are true. He does not have the embarrassment of riches on offense that Patrick Mahomes has. So at this moment, given the fact that Aaron Rodgers at this moment has more touchdowns, fewer interceptions than Mahomes, a higher QBR, a higher completion percentage, and yeah, he has 2 more losses because, again, he doesn't have Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce and like a million other receivers and backs, right? He's not on the highest flying offense of all time. There is not, as Bill James once said when comparing all-time great pitchers, there's not a dime's worth of difference between these 2 this season. But at this moment, my nickel goes to Aaron Rodgers.
If you think you may be depressed, or if you're feeling overwhelmed or anxious, BetterHelp Online Counseling offers licensed professional therapists who are trained to listen and help with issues including anxiety, grief, relationship conflicts, LGBT, self-esteem, and more. Simply fill out a questionnaire to help assess your specific needs, and then get matched with your counselor in under 48 hours. Easily schedule secure video or phone sessions, plus exchange unlimited messages to communicate with your therapist at your convenience. Everything you share is confidential, and if for any reason you're unhappy with your counselor, you can request a new one at any time at no additional charge. Join the 1 million plus people who have taken charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced BetterHelp counselor. BetterHelp is an affordable option, and our listeners get 10% off your first month with the discount code TAKE. Get started right now at betterhelp.com/take. Talk to a therapist online and get help today.
One app, one tap, that's that. One swipe, one slide, sing it back. One app running with elite QBs. Russell got the cannon throwing clutch TDs. Lillard crossing over, step behind the line. Ain't no need to watch the clock, cause you know it's dang time, yeah.
You know what?
One app with the 30 for 30s. 2-finger push-ups, Bruce Lee showing no mercy. Fat Five got the crew on deck. Best believe Bo knows OG dual threat, yeah. No one else goes deeper, that's a fact. One slide, one tap, it's the ESPN app. Download now.
All right, welcome back into First Take. Let's pick up where we left off. Good to have you back with us, Stephen A. and Lewis. Both can hear me now, and we are ready to go. So here's the deal. We heard Aaron Rodgers. He was asked about MVP. He said he would love to win his 3rd MVP, talked about what it entailed. I asked Max, who is the MVP right now between Rodgers and Mahomes? And he said, it's that bad man, Stephen A. So I'm going to assume you're also going to say it's Aaron Rodgers, right?
Well, I'm not going to say it's Aaron Rodgers now. I still think Aaron Rodgers could win the league MVP, but based on the way that they're both playing, let's take into consideration Aaron Rodgers has had 5 300-plus yard games. Patrick Mahomes has had 9, including two 400-yard games, and one of them was for 462 yards passing, completing 75% of his passes against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The same Tampa Bay Buccaneers team that blitzed Aaron Rodgers in the Green Bay Packers. If you recall, not only did Green Bay get annihilated 38-10 that game, but Aaron Rodgers completed about 47% of his passes. He wasn't impressive at all. That was a really, really bad night after they started the season 4-0. So when you take that into account, along with the better record, I look at Patrick Mahomes right now being in the lead. I understand that he didn't look that great last week, but he never had as bad of an afternoon as Aaron Rodgers had that one week against Tampa Bay. A matter of fact, the only loss on Kansas City's record was when they gave up 40 to the Las Vegas Raiders, but I think they scored about 33 that game. So I look at it from that standpoint, understanding the plethora of weapons that Patrick Mahomes has had available to him, which is something that I've always brought up, which is something that I think should be taken into consideration when all is said and done. It's just that right now, at this particular moment in time, I think that if you had to vote for league MVP, Patrick Mahomes would probably get it.
Yeah, I can't disagree. Look, I think we know my history as far as how I feel about Patrick Mahomes, and I think one of the things that he doesn't get enough credit for when you're talking about upper echelon quarterbacks is really how much he is in control of this offense now, and you're from a pre-snap standpoint. And I think because of the lack of crowd noise and because of the lack of fans being in stadiums, you're able to hear that, and they pick that up on the audio a lot more now with him in particular. And you see, as he alluded to this past offseason, I didn't even know defenses the way I do now. I'm really just scratching the surface of what's going on as far as my maturation process. And you're seeing now that, coupled with the fact that he is an MVP caliber talent from a pure physical perspective, pre-snap is starting to approach. I'm not saying he's at the level of guys like Aaron Rodgers and Phillip Rivers and Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, but he's starting to approach that type of mastery of the position, which I think, coupled with his natural athletic ability and the weapons he has around him, makes him an absolute, like every year, the favorite to be the MVP for the foreseeable future, despite the fact that his numbers may not be blowing away everyone else's. And that's not to take away anything from Aaron Rodgers, who you could tell early on this season, despite him saying, hey, look, I am going to help Jordan Love out as much as I can, relative to what I need to do myself here to get us to play winning football. But make no mistake about it, this is a guy who is on a mission. He is a guy who has a lot to prove. He hears all the talk about could he be turning down. You saw him reference that in that Pat McAfee interview. This is a guy who very much so still has a lot of his edge. And depending upon how he finishes up this season, I would not be surprised to see him make a strong run for MVP. But Patrick is just on I think I've run out of superlatives really to talk about his play at such a young age, and it's still at the infant levels as far as his career is concerned. But this young man is just different, man. He just is, and it's not hype. You're seeing him prove it week after week. And Stephen A., some of those numbers you pointed out as far as the number of 400-yard games and how consistently he is just putting up number after number after number with, I don't care what weapons he has. We're in for a treat for a long time because Andy Reid is not going anywhere in the foreseeable future. Brett Veach, the general manager, is not going anywhere in the foreseeable future down there. This team is loaded, and they're going to be around for a long time. He's going to win a whole bunch of MVPs in Kansas City.
I agree. I think Patrick Mahomes, as I said, is the best player I've ever seen at the position. But I think he passed Aaron Rodgers for that distinction in my eyes. Guys, I've put my eyeballs on by a hair, by a very little bit. There's really nothing on the field Mahomes does that Rodgers can't do. I think Mahomes just has this kind of added sort of gunslinger thing that galvanizes the troops and all that. But guys, we're not asking for a prediction of who's going to win it this year. We're not talking about who's the best we've ever seen. We're talking about right now. And it is very tough to make the argument for anyone other than Rodgers when, given his weapons versus Mahomes' weapons, Rodgers has the higher QBR, the higher completion percentage, more touchdowns, and fewer interceptions. Very, very tough
Wait
to
a
make
minute.
that argument. If they switch teams, do you think the Chiefs would be
No,
any worse?
you shouldn't be making the argument. You shouldn't be making the argument. Molly, see, this is when I get upset at you, Molly, because this man,
Why?
how many years has this man, how many months, I shouldn't say years, how many months has Max Kellerman been sitting here when we make the argument about the embarrassment of weapons that Patrick Mahomes has compared to most everybody else? How many days, how many weeks, how many shows has Max sat up there and shot us down?
That's fair.
Because of the very reasons. He's now trying to give the MVP.
Hold on.
to Aaron
Let me
Rodgers.
say
Now,
something
Molly.
here. Max,
Molly.
wait, hold on. Max, you
let
nobody
Molly
loves
speak.
Patrick
Yeah.
Mahomes
Let
more
Molly
than you.
speak.
And you say Patrick Mahomes should always win
Right.
MVP. Stephen A's right. But Stephen A., you flipped too.
Okay,
I'm
wait.
disappointed in you. What happened to that bad
This is what I'm saying,
You just
Molly.
jumped off the bandwagon. So both
Molly,
of
this
you.
is what I'm saying.
Disappointed in both of you.
Molly,
Can I
this
answer?
is what I'm saying.
Go ahead.
Stephen A. is getting on me for he said that everyone else was pointing out the weapons. By the way, it wasn't that close when Mahomes was like, that's not the time for the argument when Mahomes got the best numbers across the board, right? I'm saying when it's close, when Rodgers has better numbers. Now you can point to not only does Rodgers have better numbers, but he doesn't have the weapons. Meantime, Stephen A. Smith will, when you hear that bad man, that's Stephen A. Smith talking about Aaron Rodgers. It's one of the famous phrases in American life right now. And his guy has the best numbers in the league, and he's arguing for someone else.
But I don't get a chance to respond to your nonsense. Lewis, I apologize that you have to be here to listen to this because you got better things to do with your time than listen to his nonsense.
I'm here for
but
it,
just
though.
for clarification, just for clarification, Molly, I've never deviated from him being the bad man. What we're talking about is as of right now, based on the performance thus far, it being nip and tuck. I'm the guy that always talks about Aaron Rodgers. This guy, not to say that he doesn't talk about Aaron Rodgers, because he does rave about Aaron Rodgers as well. I'm talking about the argument he's making. I'm looking at Patrick Mahomes over the last 6 weeks throwing over 300 yards, including a 400-yard game. I'm talking about the performance in the immediate moment. What Max did was then say, okay, yeah, this is what we're seeing. But look at all the riches that Patrick Mahomes has. Now, how many months, Molly, has he gotten on me when I said, wait a minute, Patrick Mahomes got Tyreek Hill,
Hold up.
Travis
Me
Kelce,
flipping,
and all of these boys.
You saying
you sat up there and said
there is no, that is not
you
close.
question whether Tyreek Hill was the best receiver in football.
Mr. Aaron
You talked about
Rodgers.
Travis Kelce not being the best tight end in football. That was you. You did that.
Yeah, but by the way, Kittle's hurt, right? Like this year, Travis Kelce is. Look, you are Mr. Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers has 39 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. Has a higher completion percentage, and Patrick Mahomes is coming off a 3-interception game. So right now, at this moment, this is the time for you to come out and support your guy.
I got Q-tips, Lewis. I got Q-tips. I actually unclog my ears and listen. I'm not saying that your argument is wrong. I'm saying the very argument that you're using to make your point is what you've maligned everybody for using for years.
Mahomes.
That's my point.
Before, not only did Mahomes have more touchdowns, fewer interceptions, more yards, better touchdown-interception ratio, and a better one-loss record, he didn't have a 3-interception game.
That wasn't
coming
your
off
argument.
that game when Rodgers got the numbers.
All right. The two of you.
I apologize,
you
Lewis.
start to bring this stuff
I apologize,
in.
Lewis.
The two of you.
That was
doing
not
a
your
duet. You're
argument.
both doing a duet like Fred Astaire
You all
today.
over the place.
Okay. Let me just say this really quickly because I want to get to your Steelers. Oh, my goodness. By the way, Lewis, I saw you're up for a few GM jobs. Very interesting. Rooting for you. Side note, I was watching Get Up earlier. All right, now let's get to the Steelers, guys. Stephen A., your team. They might have a record of 11-2, but it's no secret they've fallen off the last few weeks. Just ask your quarterback, Big Ben.
It's not the end of the world. If we were starting the postseason tomorrow, maybe there'd be a little bit more panic on our part. Like we got to get something figured out right now. Well, we need to get it figured out now. But the good thing is we know we've got games after these next 3.
All right, Stephen A., I'm going to start with you here. This is your squad. Obviously, we know Mike Tomlin hasn't been happy with their play either. Based on how the Steelers look at this moment, are you confident they're even going to win a playoff game?
No, not at this moment. I'm not saying they're not going to win a playoff game, but as we presently stand here today, they wouldn't win a playoff game. How you going to win a playoff game when you can't run the football? You're the Pittsburgh Steelers. You got to be able to run the football. You can't run the football. That puts even more the onus on Big Ben Roethlisberger, who's going to get some things done, but at the same time is going to be prone to mistakes. He's got his 5 wideouts. He's got Ebron and Claypool and Juju Smith-Schuster and Deontay Johnson, James Washington. We know the bevy of weapons that he has available to him, but we also know that he's prone to make mistakes. And I think when you can't run the football and you can't move those chains and you can't chew that clock and you can't give your defense some rest and you can't do those things, it's going to spell trouble for you, particularly when both Devin Bush and Bud Dupree are out. It's compromising your secondary because of your unwilling, no, I should say unwillingness, but incapability to get to the quarterback, et cetera, et cetera. I think all of that has a rippling effect. And if you're the Steelers, now that you've lost 2 games in a row, and the Kansas City Chiefs are clearly the number 1 seed, if you're the Steelers, okay, you may not play Buffalo, but you're either going to play Cleveland, Baltimore, Indy, or Tennessee in all likelihood. I think any of those 4 teams would beat a Steelers team that has looked the way that they have looked over the last 3 weeks, probably 4 to 5 weeks. I'm not impressed. I'm not pleased. I'm quite disgusted that they have looked the way that they have looked, and they better get themselves together or they're going to get bounced out after starting the season 11-0. They're going to end up not winning one single damn playoff game, which would be a disaster. They better get their act together.
This is ridiculous. First of all, Stephen A., the Steelers can absolutely, will they? Yeah, I'm going to say they will win a playoff game. I'll say that right now. This was totally predictable. We knew that people would say the sky is falling now for the Steelers right at this point in the schedule. Their bye got messed around. First, when the Titans had COVID, they lost their later season bye. When you really want it, they had to take it in week 4. The league was going to compensate with a bye later in the season, a mini bye, right? That got compromised because then the Ravens got COVID, right? So the Steelers played 3 games in 13 days. Of course they were tired. They, by the way, yes, the Ravens had COVID and everything. I get it. They beat the Ravens. They then lost to a surging Washington team, right? Predictable trap game after a Ravens game, emotional letdown, 3rd game in 13 days. But then they play the Bills on short rest. It's not just a regular short rest, right? It's short rest after playing 3 games in 13 days. And so their 4th game in 19 days, supposed to have 4 games in 28 days. They just basically doubled up a week is what wound up happening. Was against the Buffalo Bills, one of the elite teams in the AFC. Now, against both Washington and Buffalo, they had early game leads. In fact, they had a 14-point lead on Washington, and they had a lead early on Buffalo. But what happens this time in the season when you never got your bye and you had to double up, basically play an extra game in 4 weeks, right? What happens? You get tired. You lose the war of attrition. As the game goes on, you play worse, which is what happened. You're right. Dupree is a bad loss, and they have no run blocking, and that's not good. But they simulate the run game with these short passes from Roethlisberger, and in fact, are higher on the list in terms of time of possession than a lot of the teams with run games. I like Pittsburgh against Tennessee. I like them against Indianapolis. I like them against Baltimore. And I like them against the Browns. I think they will win a playoff game.
I think they can. I think they will if this. Look, I understand. Look, over the past 2 weeks, there's been an alarming trend with this football team, all right? And I think they know it. Mike Tomlin knows it, and they need to get it fixed. They need to get it turned around over these next couple of weeks, and starting this Monday night against Cincinnati. They have to start eliminating the number of 3-and-outs that they have and the number of drives that are ending in turnovers on offense. And that kind of speaks to, look, there's a lack of concentration and a lack of stick-to-itiveness when it comes to the running game, number 2, that is happening with this football team. There's a lack of complementary football being played on the offensive side. They become very much so pass-happy. And when they are so pass-happy, they aren't being efficient in that aspect of the game because they're dropping the ball. And there is no excuse for that. I don't care how tired you are, when your bye week was, or how many games you played in how many days. Catching the football, look, as Mike Tomlin said, I expect players to make routine plays routinely. Catching the football is a
Come on,
routine
Deontay.
play. That's not predicated on the amount of rest that you have. So they need to get those kind of things fixed. They need to commit themselves to playing more complementary style football in these later parts of the year and into the playoffs, because I'll tell you this, their goal is not just to win a playoff game. Their goal is to get to the Super Bowl. That's what the Pittsburgh Steelers do. And if you don't play complementary football against a team that's going to be there in the end, in that AFC title game, if you don't play complementary football against number 15 from the Chiefs, and you give him extra possessions, and you start losing the time of possession battle, and you wear out your defense that is banged up now and is missing some key components, he's going to light you on fire, and your season's going to be a disappointment, because all that Pittsburgh really wants to be judged by is Super Bowl appearances and or titles. So winning a playoff game, I understand that's the topic of discussion here. Will they win a playoff game? But it's bigger than that for them. And until they fix some of these issues that have been cropping up, in particular the past 2 weeks, they're not going to get there. They need the complementary game to really show its head right now, rather rear its head right now, and they got to get that fixed before they head into the postseason.
Lewis, I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to ask a couple of questions here. Number one, over the last 3 years, 2018, the Steelers' run defense was ranked 31st, second to last. Last year, it was ranked 29th. Right now, they rank 31st in the league. Lewis, answer me a couple of questions in one-word answers. I would ask Max to do it, but I'm not sure he's capable of it. If you are, Max, you can chime in as well. Here's the deal. Louis Riddick, if the Steelers right now, because the question that Molly asked is, based on what we're seeing right now, Louis Riddick, would the Steelers beat the Browns? Right now? They beat the Browns right now?
Yes.
What?
It's a psychological thing. That's why I'm going to say that.
I'm stunned that you said that.
They
would beat Baltimore right now?
It pains me to say that, and I'll tell you why. It pains me to say that. I think it's kind of like psychological, though, more so than what they're actually showing on the field. I know that's not the answer you wanted to hear. I know it's not the answer you wanted to hear.
Okay, what about Baltimore?
But I'm going to say yes.
What about Baltimore?
No.
What about Tennessee and Indy?
Can I point something now?
No.
Go ahead.
Can I point something out? They've played Baltimore and Cleveland 3 times so far. They're 3-0 this year. The Steelers are 3-0 against those teams.
I know.
Okay, and Indy and the Titans, they're in a soft division. Usually, playoff performers don't come from those kind of divisions. The Steelers were forgetting how dominant their defense could be, and again, they're wiped out from the schedule.
Who was the quarterback for the Ravens,
Let them
Max?
get rest, and let's see what happens. One time,
Who was the quarterback for the Ravens when the Steelers beat them? No. He didn't play.
RG3.
They beat them.
I'm sorry if I'm wrong. I got amnesia.
RG3 got
if I'm
hurt,
wrong.
and then it was their third stringer.
Yeah. COVID.
They played them twice this year.
When all them COVID tests.
Second time was without.
Okay.
Right, the second
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Max,
Am I making this up?
Max, the AFC South isn't soft either now. Don't say that. The Colts aren't soft.
All right, y'all, it's no secret. Much has been made of James Harden wanting to be traded. Here he is. He addressed the media on this subject Wednesday. James, floor is yours.
I can only focus on right now. And for me, the best James Harden is, making sure I'm in shape. Like I said, I hadn't really had an opportunity to play 5-on-5. Individual workouts, weightlifting, individual basketball training is great, but as every NBA player can agree, there's nothing like 5-on-5 training.
Hey, James, I wondered, even though you won't talk about your future and all the rumors out there, do you feel like all the rumors about your future and about you wanting to be traded are a distraction to this team and the success that the team is trying to have this year?
Since I've been here, there's nothing that's been said about it. Everybody in the locker room, coaching staff has been focused on ramping up and preparing for the season. So that's all that matters.
Big Perk gracing your screens. Kendrick, good to see you. I like the all black, monochromatic. I'm into that. But Stephen A., you're up first. There's a lot happening, and I need you to break this down for me. Who looks worse here? Is it James Harden or is it Houston as a franchise?
Well, I think right now it's Houston, and I'm going to tell you why. First of all, I got to give love to my man Vincent Goodwill for Yahoo, because that's my little brother right there, and he was talking about this story from a late date to more than a year and a half ago, of course. And I also want to give props to James Harden because, listen, you don't have to answer every question if you don't want to, but he showed up there yesterday. He was right in front of the media, and he just said, hey, you know what? I'm not going to get into trade speculation and all of that other stuff. He's basically saying, listen, I'm here until I'm not. Here's why I'm going to tell you the Houston Rockets look worse at this particular moment in time. With Daryl Morey being gone, with Mike D'Antoni being gone, one could easily surmise that the culture that exists within the Houston Rockets that we're all lamenting was primarily their fault because they allowed it to take place. And that's really what this comes down to. If they were still there and that's just the way that they do business, then we can look at James Harden and we could say, why would you be taking advantage of these perks? Why would you be exercising your power in that way? And to some degree, we still could say that. But the only reason why I say the Rockets primarily instead of James Harden is that if this is the culture that you allowed, you're a superstar, you bring stuff to the table. We missed the playoffs the previous 3 years before you arrived. We've been in the playoffs ever since. We've been championship contenders. We've been to the conference finals twice. You're a 3-time scoring champion. You're a league MVP. And not only that, minutes played, playing through injuries, games played, etc. He's right up there with the best of them. So if you take all of those things into consideration, no one can accuse him for not doing his job. And if everybody wants to complain about the culture, well, who's responsible for the culture ultimately? It certainly isn't the player. You can make a contribution to it. It would be good for you to exercise that level of professionalism. But in the end, the actual onus of the culture is on the franchise itself. They allowed it. And they knew that it could potentially alienate other folks and evidently didn't care enough to reel that in. And that's why I say as these stories unfold, even though people want to take their shots at James Harden, ultimately you're going to look at the Houston Rockets, not the present Houston Rockets, the previous regime. Morey was there. Mike D'Antoni was there. Hell, they were there before Tillman Fertitta got there, for crying out loud. And he's the owner of the franchise right now. So we got to look at it that way.
The Rockets look worse than James Harden right now. First of all, this is how business is done in the NBA. The owners have a monopoly, de facto monopoly, and so they have huge leverage in the CBA negotiations, right? They get a lot their way. But the other side of that is if you're a superstar, you got a lot of clout, and you can force the hand of a lot of teams. Because the fact is it's almost impossible to win a championship without at least one superstar. Superstar, not an all-star, superstar. And Harden's a superstar. Who looks worse right now? Guys, it's the Rockets because let's not forget, Tillman Fertitta really, and he told us about this on First Take, and Stephen A., we've discussed it many times, not good enough, right? What Morey and D'Antoni were doing were not good enough. Wasn't good enough. You want to win a championship. And so D'Antoni was a lame duck coach. What's he going to really do as a lame duck coach? Let's see you perform or else. What Tillman Fertitta I don't think understood, and I think what most people still don't understand, the Rockets should have never been as close to a championship as they were. That was because of Daryl Morey and Mike D'Antoni having the courage of their convictions to play a kind of basketball that would be criticized. Only the most efficient shots taken, right? Either you get an extra point for them or it's a really high percentage shot. That's the way they were going to play. They'd be criticized. They're not playing defense enough. They need to move the ball more, mid-range shots, all this kind of stuff. Meantime, because of the way they played, they took a Warriors team, fully loaded, with KD and Steph and Clay and Dre and everybody, 7 games. And they had a home game against that team, right? You could say, well, really, who else was in the West? How about the Cavs in the East? Because the Cavs got swept. Cavs got swept. LeBron and Kevin Love got swept against that Golden State Warriors team that was almost beaten by the Rockets, right? So, Fertitta, that's not good enough. Daryl Morey's gone. D'Antoni's gone. Now all hell breaks loose. This is what happens. You got rid of people. You thought you'd replace them with better people. It's not trending in that direction. Who looks worse right now? And now your superstar wants out, and this is what's become of it? Clearly, Harden's like, look, I'm not cooperating with you. You got to make this move. And the Rockets are saying, no, we're not going to make it right now. Is this all in the service of winning a championship? Because that's why you get rid of Morey and D'Antoni. Seems to be backfiring. Harden's going to wind up in a position where he'll have a chance to win a championship. The Rockets will not.
Well, I have to respectfully disagree with the both of you, and here's why. right now, to me, the Rockets, in my opinion, are moving in the right direction. They just hired a young stud in Steven Silas, who is well respected around the league, not by just front offices or other coaches, but by current players, former players. They have nothing but high praise for him and says that how he's a student of the game, an offensive genius, and it's about time that he got his opportunity. So I think the Rockets did a great job by hiring Steven Silas. Second of all, with them trading Russell Westbrook, who didn't want to be there because of the lack of accountability that they were having in the Rockets organization, especially when it came down to James Harden and all the other players and all the other rumors that are coming out about James Harden not taking winning seriously, not wanting to adjust to giving up the club life. Right now, James Harden looks the worst. And here's why. You don't show up to camp. Then when you do show up to camp, you show up to camp late. And then when you do show up, you show up out of shape. And this is what I was trying to tell you and Max, Stephen A., when I was trying to have virtual school about a couple of shows ago, and I told y'all that James Harden has to go out on the court and perform at an MVP type level, because guess what? Guess what the rumors are circling now around the front offices of organizations and what GMs are talking about that probably had interest in acquiring James Harden. They're saying, should I give up a young star and my assets for James Harden, who might come in and tear down the culture, who might complain because he might not get things, or might just shut down because things might not go his way, or might be a bad example on the younger guys that's already here? We don't want that. So with that being said, it's on James Harden, because the Rockets, in my opinion, you get back John Wall, who's happy to be in Houston. You get back a first-round pick. You getting all these assets, and the Rockets still, right now, are a playoff team in the Western Conference. So a lot of this is on James Harden, and James Harden looks worse, not the Rockets.
Well, I don't agree with you that he looks worse. I don't disagree. Hold on, Max. I don't disagree with any of the points that you're making. A matter of fact, Kendrick Perkins, I had a brother call me the other day and say that James Harden made a mistake by not signing, or rather it would have been better if James Harden had signed for the $50 million extension, because that would have given him 4 years under contract instead of 2. And that brother that called me was you. So you make a very valid point, and you're right about that. What I'm saying to you, however, is this. If you look at the Houston Rockets, because of the culture that they allowed, that's the reason I'm pointing out how that is a problem for the Houston Rockets right now, looking worse. Because people are looking at them, and it's not just James Harden, but you're also looking at them under the regime of Daryl Morey and said, is this what you allowed to transpire? I mean, you're catering to your stars to that degree? And it's a star that may not be putting forth the due diligence in terms of rallying the troops, galvanizing the troops. Because I don't think anybody could question James Harden's effort on the court, his commitment to playing at a high level. I don't think anybody could question that about him. He shows up every night, and he's the real deal. We know that about him. But the flip side is that when you're the leader in the face of a franchise, you got to do a little bit more than that in order to galvanize the troops around you. And part of the reason that might have gotten in the way is the Houston Rockets.
This is why Harden actually doesn't look worse. With you. If you look, wait. This is why Harden doesn't actually look worse, guys, because everyone knows this is the superstar's leverage. If he's a malcontent, if he doesn't want to be there, he's going to be unhappy. And what happens is the rest of the league knows that's a distressed asset. Perk, even if you're right, and to some Harden looks worse, in fact, what that's going to do is further devalue him in a trade, making it easier to get to where he wants to go. Because they're not going to keep a disgruntled player all year. They just won't. They won't do well as a team if they do that. And so, you know who's smiling right now? You know who's sitting there smiling? Daryl Morey. If what you're saying is true, Daryl Morey is sitting back laughing, going, oh, okay, no one wants him? Bet. Okay, here's our offer. Great. Come on, James Harden. Join Embiid and Simmons. Daryl Morey is laughing right now if what you're saying is true.
Oh, you think that's just how it happened, Max? Let me tell you something. I talked to 3 general managers over the last 3 days, and they all had the same question about James Harden. Would I be crazy to trade for him and give up this person or give up this person or give up these assets and bring him to this organization knowing what he brings off the court? Asking me questions about him. This is not something that I'm making up, Max Kellerman. I'm telling you something that I know. So turn your video on your laptop and listen to me as I'm teaching you and schooling you about what's going on. And what's happening right now is the front offices are looking at Dennis Rodman, looking at James Harden like the modern day Dennis Rodman. He wants to be the rock star. And look, Dennis Rodman was a rock star, but at least he showed up to work and was in shape. And what I'm trying to tell you is that teams are now second guessing themselves, Max, on whether or not to take a chance on James Harden and give up a young star and some assets because they don't go.
What that means is, basketball professor, let me introduce you to an economic theory, okay? Supply and demand. If the demand is down, right, there's less demand for Harden, then his price falls, making it easier for him to get to where he wants to go. Meaning the longer this drags on, the less the Rockets are likely to get for him, putting more pressure on them to deal him now.
Max, again, the Rockets do not have to trade James Harden. He still has 2 years left on his deal. Do you not realize that the Rockets are not just going to give up James Harden? They're showing us that right now. This is the reason that James Harden is on the Houston Rockets today, because they're not just going to take anything, Max. So what are you talking about?
Still.
Well, let me say this. Let me chime in here. Hold on, Max. First of all, Kendrick Perkins is absolutely right. This is exactly what GMs are saying. They're asking these questions about James Harden as we speak. He's absolutely, positively right, because I've spoken to a few myself. That's exactly what they're saying. That's number one. Number two, there's no way that the market for James Harden is going to lower, that the Houston Rockets is just going to say, okay, he's so much of a malcontent and he doesn't want to be here so desperately, and the market's going to dry out. So as a result, you know what? We're going to give less. We're going to take less just to get rid of him. People are going to try that. Executives are going to try to pull that okey doke. It will not work. They're going to have to give up a tremendous asset, if not several, in order to get the likes of James Harden. There is no way around that, because he's so significant to their franchise that if they lose him and they don't get some kind of equitable compensation in return, they know that they're done for years to come. That's the situation right now.
But think of what you're saying. First of all, they've already lost him. This is the power that an NBA superstar has. If he's not going to give his heart and soul to your team, you're not going to do very well with him. Now, no matter what you say, Stephen A., you're right. There will be a very good package for James Harden under any circumstances. But if what Kendrick Perkins is saying is true, and of course it's true, or he wouldn't say it on TV, right? Of course, I understand what you're saying is true. The fewer GMs want James Harden necessarily means his trade value goes down. The more buyers, the higher the price. The fewer buyers, the lower the price. So whatever package you're talking about, Stephen A., gets weaker as time goes on if more and more GMs feel the way the 3 that KP spoke to feel. That's my point. That's why it's in the best interest of the Rockets to trade him sooner than later, because the value ain't going up.
Max, that didn't make no damn sense at all. That's why if you're the Rockets, you hold on to him, because you have him for 2 years and you don't just have to accept anything. And by the way, James Harden, let me tell you something. One thing I do know about James Harden is a hooper. So once he get in between those lines, he's going to hoop. You watched the preseason game. He was engaged. He was out there cheering on his teammates. Interacting with his teammates, figuring out things on the defensive end. So, Max, to your point, you keep saying that it's in the Rockets' best interest just to trade them and take whatever. No, it's not. It's in their best interest to do exactly what they're doing right now and saying, you know what, we're going to start the season with James Harden wearing a Houston Rockets jersey.
You think they're going to finish it that way?
No, they're probably not going to finish it that way, but that doesn't mean they're not going to give them away for a box of cookies. They're not going to fold like that. They can't afford to fold like that. Could you imagine what will happen to the Houston Rockets franchise if you give away the league's leading scorer over the last 3 years, a league MVP, a brother that's averaged over 30 the last 3 years for nothing? Could you imagine what's going to happen to their franchise? Right. They know this. They know this, and James knows this. James knows it, and James Harden, in his heart of hearts, he knows he made a mistake by letting it get out that he wanted to go to one particular team. He should have just said, I want out. But when you highlight a specific team, what happens is that really makes it that much tougher for Houston to make a deal, which is part of the reason why he's still there.
Stephen A., is Daryl Morey happier or sadder this morning based on the latest news? You think Daryl Morey's sitting there a little sadder or a little happier today? Because that'll tell you a lot of what you need to know. The GMs who want to make a move on Harden are happier today than they were a couple days ago. A couple days ago. A couple days ago. A couple days ago. A couple days ago.